All right, so what I want you to do is we've all gone through and we've done the masses, and if you haven't, you should be knowing how to do it now. We've cut the floors. Now we want to start taking that same idea and we want to start individualizing and getting more granular with what we're doing. So in this case, I have just a small snippet. Maybe this is a podium of a high-rise or whatever it may be, right? But what I have in my model here is I have individual masses or generic models. They can be either or. And each one of those now is corresponding with the type of program element. So if I looked at a floor plan, this would be an office. And then I have, well, this is what we call a 3D stacking diagram, right? So maybe this is like 3 floors of my project. And how I'm going to handle that is once I have those 3 floors masked out, I'm going to select it. And for now, we're going to group it. There's a reason why I don't like groups as much. But in the case of at least for now, getting this out, I can take a group and I can save it out as another Revit file and make it a link later on. Because what happens is we'll want to basically contain this as one. Okay, so some things can't be grouped. That's fine. Basically, we want to take it in and say, okay, this way I only have to model certain pieces of this. So this is now one grouping of my project. Right, and I'll come in to my left-hand view or an elevation in this case, and I see my group, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to array it up. So AR for array. Let it generate here. And I'm going to say I want to go up that high, and the array works really easily. It's like AutoCAD. It's kind of copy function in this case. It's really hard to do a 3-dimensional array anymore. And maybe I'm going to do it lightly, so maybe I only want 6 of those, so I have an 18-story high-rise. So we begin thinking of this as a pie slice to the overall whole of the project. And what we'll end up doing with those masses is I'm not going to draw walls explicitly because I want to have the ability to flex this model later on. So I'll use this. So hopefully you'll set up like grid lines. We'll go over that a little bit today. We'll set up some grid lines, we'll set up some levels, and we'll snap the masses to those grid lines. So then when I want to flex the size of my offices, I'm not doing it parametrically, I'm doing it just based on the grid lines. And that's going to stretch my structure, it's going to stretch everything else. So hopefully this doesn't take as long. By doing groups, you can see right now, by doing groups, you're going to immediately bog down your file. So I'll have you do it this way first so you can feel the pains and the Revit woes, and then we'll talk about how to get that out as a link later on. Now, I had this particular project linked and a lot of things to file, so, whoops. So it kind of went the wrong direction too. So you have to be careful on when you array that you go up and not to the other way. So when I select it and I do my array, I want to make sure that it's not going in the XY plane. It's going to go in the YZ plane. And how I do that is there's this constrain button. So sometimes I want to constrain it, other times I don't want to constrain it. So hopefully this time I'll just do 3 and hopefully it generates pretty quickly. You can see groups are significantly going to slow down your computer. Remove those constraints, delete my type. Yeah. So ideally, in an ideal case, this would have rayed up in the air, and in this case, it looks like it only went side to side, and I can just double check that. But the ideal there it is. So that's what we wanted. Perfect. Right. So some of the objects wouldn't array. But essentially, I'm beginning to think of, building just the repetitive elements first, and then taking that and then copying that up through the project. Because that's what most high-rises are. It's just an extrusion, and every 6 or 7 floors, there's going to be a mechanical floor because you got to get plumbing and everything else in there. But really, this is what I want you to do: is I want you to start getting granular with the elements. So I'm going to walk you through today a little bit of just setting up one floor, how to approach doing the different colors, putting a material parameter on there, how to handle levels, and how to array the thing up, okay? So that's the demo for that. Basically, I would assume that you already have a mass pulled into your project, and you have a new project. In this case, I'm going to start fresh, like I don't have one, and I'm going to do a new project. Let's do an architectural template, click OK. Right, and I want to lay out some grids. So again, these are just my elevation markers if you haven't figured that out yet. Right, and I want to have a gridding system so I can lay out my, one, to lay out my structure, two, to lay out my walls and everything else. I'm just going to move my elevation markers out a little bit so I have some room to play with. Right, and then I'm going to start with my grid. So to do a grid, it's GR on the keyboard, or I can go to the structure menu, and then I have my grids here under the datum. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a grid. Try and draw my grid straight. And then I'm going to use that same array function. It's AR on the keyboard. And maybe I want a 25-foot grid. Maybe I want 10 of those. Right, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction. We'll do GR for grid. And I'm going to array that down 25 feet. And maybe I want 6 of those. Right, now you'll see that anytime I make an array, I don't need my grid lines to be smart, right? I'm not trying to do a model like that. At this point, arrays are always going to be taken in as a grouped object, so that way you can change it later on. So I'll just go ahead and select everything. And just a little marker and keynote here. So if I select everything, including the elevation tags, I should get this little filter button. That filter button is going to allow me to filter out what I'm selecting. And I use this quite often, especially when you start getting a lot of elements in your model. So in this case, I just want the model groups. I'm going to click apply, and I'm going to go ahead and ungroup that. So now I have individual grid lines. You know, and I can go through and I can get those so they're stuck together by locking dimensions. In that case, I really don't mind. But what I'm going to do is, I know in the back area for my demo building, right, I'm going to have a core element back here that's going to handle my stairs and all my bathrooms and everything else. And then in the center of it, I'm going to have a giant atrium. And then each side, I'm going to maybe have a different set of things happening. So really, I'm going to think of this as a pie slice out of my project. So if I look in my east view here, right, I already have my level set up, and I'm going to leave it as is for that. Right, I'm going to go to my level 1 floor plan again, and I can begin thinking about this. So I want to have maybe a segment of offices on the left side of this plan, right? Maybe this 9 square at the bottom left, right? So I'm going to model those as individual masses inside the same mass, right? So how I do that is I go to the architecture tab, and we got this component area, and underneath that component is a nice little trick that I can model in place. So I'm going to model in place, and I can select a category. So if I had an abnormal wall or anything it may be, or an abnormal structural element, I can still model it in place and still categorize it this way, but then I can do any custom piece I want. And in my sense, I just want mass because it's a program element. And I'm going to call it offices. Right? So now I'm not going to draw a giant box for all my offices. I'm going to draw one small box, and I'm going to create form with it. And I'm not going to lock anything because I want to have the ability to change it later. I'm going to tab through, and I'm going to make sure in my elevation that it's going up to my level 2, which it is. And then this box, there's a few things. I'm going to want a color on it for sure. So the main thing is we're using it as a stacking diagram. I want to have a color. So I'm going to take my material by category. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to add parameter. Instead of clicking by category, what I did was there's this button on the right of that. And that's how I add material parameters to any object. It's by the object through the properties area of the dialog. I'm going to add that parameter, and I'm going to call it, for this I'm just going to call it program, right? Because I'm going to add the same program element to multiple objects. So I'm just going to call it program and click OK. So that way when I make multitudes of these, if I always call it program, I'll always know that that corresponds with that material set. Now because I applied it to this object, and it's an order of operations with this, I want to make sure I do it to the single one that I'm going to end up copying everywhere else. Once I have that, I can copy it. So I'm still within my mass. I've made a mass inside this massing family, but then I'm going to make multiple masses inside of it, so I can still get the lines and still get the stacking data out of it. So I'm just going to do CO for copy, and then in the options bar is this multiple. So that allows me to not have to hit copy a lot of times, and I'm just going to copy that over into each one of my grid cells. There. And maybe I want one there, one there, one there. Okay. And then I'm going to finish my mass. So when I look in 3D, right, I see my mass as a multitude of little different masses, but I can select all the offices at the same time. The last part is now to put the material on it. The material is now a parameter, so I just edit this thing's type, and then I do it by category, and I can say that I want to create a material corresponding to whatever program that is. So how I handle the material colors on all these is you can only make a material by duplicating another material. And I have a preset bank of materials that I usually use. And I can give you these at another time. Maybe I'll load them up with this demo file from today so you have these libraries. But I can load in a library file as well. So right now there's no materials in my massing library because it disappeared. But if I go to my project library, I have some custom materials already out there. So I always, because of scripts that I've written for rendering, I always 3-digit code my materials in Revit, because when I take it out of Revit over to Max or whatever it may be, right, it's going to I combine my Revit project by material name, and then I can assign materials based on those numbers parametrically. So I always have just a custom bank set for me. So then once I have that, and they also appear at the top of my stack all the time. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to rename this one to be offices. I'm going to rename this one to be atrium. I'm going to rename this one to be core, or we'll call it services. And then maybe this one is, I don't know, what do we want to call it? What is it? Common areas? Public. Call it public. Okay, now within each one of these materials, if I hover over, and this is Revit 2014, they changed the dialog box. It's all the same idea of editing, they just changed how it is presented to you. So I'm going to click and edit that. Now some key things are, right now we're not doing any sort of rendering. So any rendering has to deal with this appearance area. The graphics is what we really care about. The graphics is going to handle how it's shaded in a 3D view, what its surface pattern is in a 3D view, so I'm going to want to make sure that that set is solid, and then I want to make sure that it's got a color of red, right? And I can always use render appearance for shading, make sure that's checked, so whatever my render appearance is, it's also going to pick up that floating value color as well. And then my cut pattern, when I look in a plan view, I also want to see that color, so I need to say that its cut pattern is also that solid fill and also of a red color. And I'll click done. And then I'll have to do it for my atrium as well. So I'll make sure that that's yellow. Make sure that's solid fill. This one's going to be my cut pattern of solid. This one's going to be yellow. Done for that one. And then services, we'll do the same thing. Make sure that this one's green. Pattern is solid. Pattern is solid. So it's a little labor intensive at first, but once you get it all done, you can carry this on from project to project, and you don't have to do it every time. Unfortunately, when I built this library, I pretty much just did the names and said, screw it, I'm done. So hopefully somebody can do that for me, and then we'll have it for everybody. Blue. Blue. Okay, so that sets up my 4 materials. I always want to make sure I click apply. I don't know how many times I've not clicked apply because I've been in such a hurry, and then I lose all the work I just did. So always make sure you hit apply, hit OK, and then now my program is public. So I know I want to make those actually offices. So I can select this now and say that this is now offices. Click OK and click OK. So now my object disappears red. All right, so then the rest of this is just going off my grid lines and filling in the other pieces. So maybe my atrium is some irregular form. So I'll draw that next. So I'm going to do my model in place. And it's going to be under mass again. Call this atrium. Right, maybe I have like some area over here and here too for it. So I'm going to draw on one here, create form, and then I'm going to copy that one over. Oh, well first I'm going to actually make the parameter again, so I make sure I add a material parameter. And as we go into more detail, we'll talk about shared parameters. If I would have set up a shared parameter, I would have just selected it from a text file and I would have put the same one on everyone. But once we get more detailed in our projects, we can always change it later. So I'm going to copy that over to the side. So I have one there. And then I'm going to put one right in the center here. So I'm going to copy that same one. And I really don't want to have to draw anything again. And you can see that I'm stuck in an XY place. So if I want to move something anywhere in the XY plane, I'm going to deselect constrain. And then I'm allowed to actually select, and then I can drag that piece to whatever size I want.
So is constraint like ortho?
Yep, constraints like ortho. You got it. Right, maybe I want my atrium a little bigger there. Actually, no, it wouldn't work. I'd have to get through there. Right, so then I finish my mass. And then if I go to my 3D view, I have my mass. And then I edit its type, and I say that you are atrium. That picks that up. So then again, I just finish out my pieces. Again, I said that in the back here is going to be like the core service area. You may or may not build a building like that, but for this, at least that's how I'm building my building for demo sake. Do my mass. And I'm going to call this services. And in this one, it's going to be a long line. And I'm going to create form, select it, put the material parameter of program on there, click OK. And then I'll make sure that I finish that one, select it, and then edit its type, tell it that it wants to be services. Click OK, click apply. All right, and then I got, basically I think what I want to do is for this, I'm gonna make this area, this L shape, my public, so this will be public, and then I'm gonna put some new offices here. So let's finish the public, and I'll show you what you need to do when you want to add things to a file that you've already done. So then I'll go ahead and do the architecture tab again. Once again, it's component, model in place. I'm gonna do the mass again. Click OK. I would have renamed it for sake of trying to speed things along. I'm going to go ahead and just do this by once. Now, because it's irregular, I actually have to pencil this one out. So you'll have to choose not the rectangle, but actually penciling it. Right, and I missed here. So again, the align tool is your best friend. And I don't want to lock it because I'm going to use this later in a different method. If I constrain it, you'll see the errors that I did when I went to array it last time. So let's go ahead and create that form. Make sure that that's called and got a material parameter of public. And I'm going to click OK. Oh, excuse me. Program, not public. Click OK. And then I'll finish that mass and then grab that mass and add the material of. So here, because I added both on there, now I see it twice. So you want to be careful because once I have it there, it's hard to delete it off of there. So that's public. Click apply, click OK. That comes as blue. So now I have this area. So I want to add some more offices into that. And I've already made the office plan, right? So all I need to do is once I have this in place, there's this edit in place button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit in place. And I'm going to take one of the offices that I made already, and I'm just going to copy that over, and I don't have to really reset anything because it's already got all the other data that I had done prior is going to stick with that. Okay, and then I just finish that, and now I've added to my program. So then I have my little pie slice. So if I look in 3D, so those, they went a little above, right? So I want to bring those down to that level line. So whenever that happens, I go to my elevation view. Make sure you do your align tool. And again, I'm not locking any of these, right? I just want to bring them down to size. Okay? And that's it. So that's my pie slice. So I'm going to save this out now. So I'm going to assume that we're going to begin structuring a high-rise project. So how I do high-rises, because once the computer gets so bogged down, you're going to get floors in there, you're going to get walls, windows, you're going to get plumbing fixtures, you're going to have these awesome 3D toilets in there that are going to be just so labor-intensive on the computer that it's not going to handle everything in one file. So we think of it as a pie slice or a series of pie slices that make one file, right? I'm going to work in my Revit file solely. So I'll save this out as an XREF file. So we think of it like an AutoCAD XREF. So I'm going to say XREF, and it's going to be floors, maybe 5 through 27. And I'm going to click save, right? So then I begin thinking about how to structure this project. And I'm going to take this piece and then we're going to add to it later. So I'm going to make a new project that's going to house, we're going to call it like my master file. So do a new project again. And I'm going to save this one as my master file. Call this master Craig's High Rise. Okay. And then in this one, this is going to house all the levels and everything else where I'm going to put it. So maybe I want this pie slice to be 27 floors. So I'm going to array this up 10 feet. And then I'm going to make it 27 floors. Okay. So that lays out maybe the gist of the extrusion of my tower. Right. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to link this in. So I'm going to go to Insert. And now what's going to happen is because I have it open in another Revit file in the same Revit version, right? So I have Revit open and I have the same Revit file open, right? When I go to link it in, it's going to say that it can't link it in because it has it open. What I need to do is when I'm working in this link structure, I have to have two versions of Revit open at the same time. So just be aware of that, and I'll show you what the problem is. When I link, and I go to the XREF version of it, click on Open. It says linked file cannot be reloaded because it's loaded into another open document. So what I need to do is if I'm happy with my changes for now into this file, I'm going to go ahead and click Close with it. I can close that one. Ignore that sign. Right now I should be able to link this file in. So I'm going to go ahead and link that Revit file in. And it's my XREF floors 5 through 27. And you'll see it comes in. It doesn't come in on level 1. It carries its levels with it. But I can use those now to align my level 1 to my other level 1. Right? And I don't want to see, maybe I don't want to see the grid lines. Maybe I don't want to see all the other parts. So I go to the visibility graphics for this view. One, I don't see the masses, so I want to make sure mass is on. And then also, I'm going to see Revit links appear, right? So you won't see a link file like this appear until I see Revit links. And I should see now a display setting. So my display settings, the settings are handled by the host view. What I want to do is I want to do it as a custom. And then in that custom view, I'm going to say that my linked views, let's see, view filters are we'll do it by linked view. And then what I would do is I would set up a view that's linked to this one and say that whatever is in my east view, I'm going to turn off those elements inside that project, right? And we can get into that next week, or maybe if we have time today, I'll get into it. But I'm just going to do it by linked view for now and show you why I do that. I'm going to click apply and click OK. So then I should see now if I turn this on shaded, still don't see my project. So let's go to a 3D view, do ZF. And then I don't have massings on, so I'm going to do mass. There we got my settings. I'm going to go back to my north view and I see my project. So now I'm going to do an array with it, and I'm only computing one of those files. I'm not computing, like where in my group I had to sit and wait for that to chug. I'm going to obviously have to wait for that to chug a little longer. But you see how much faster that went than doing it as the group view. So groups significantly slow down the project. So at all costs, if you can segment out your project this way, then, making the high rise is really, really quick. So when I make structure or I make anything else with the project, right, I'm going to load it in as if it's one floor slice, right, and I'm going to array that up as much as I can. On some of your projects like Hong Kong Bank, there's like a segment, and then another segment, and then another segment, right? So you'll build one pie slice of the segment, make that a Revit file, so you have a series of nested links. So you'll have a link into a link into a link, right? So begin thinking about how you're going to structure your project. And that's why we do the massing first, is because massings are quick, I get a quick visual of where everything's at, and I get my file structure worked out. And then I begin working individually in the pieces, because I only want to draw the wall once. I don't want to have to draw the wall 27 times. It's going to take you 27 times as long to draw that wall for the whole project. So does that make sense with everybody? All right, so this is what I want to see then for next week, is I want to see your massings finished, but then I want to see the granularity of all the data inside of it. So I take a floor plan, right? Wherever the offices are, I want to see that as a stacking diagram. Wherever the cores are going to be a separate piece. Your circulation is going to be a separate piece. So think about all your past studios and all the times where you did programming, right? And then programming in terms of figuring out how many people go into space, right? What those divisions were, right? If I have a library or I have an atrium, all those are going to be one-offs that you're still going to put in there. So then I can begin looking at it. We'll start setting up, you'll set up a link structure like this, right? Inside that master file where your mass is. And then we'll look at design options and how we can toggle one off and one on, but still have it in the same project. And then we'll start getting into making things, so it makes it look like a project. We'll look at curtain walls. We'll probably look at structure first next week, so we can start actually looking at how the thing goes together. So we always do this first, so we understand the way the parts come together. And then we'll do the structure in the building, and then we'll start really skinning it and doing everything else. Okay? So now I'll also type this up in a view. I've got my file here, so you have an example file, and I'll give you those material libraries to work with. So any questions? Yes?
Do you see widespan products need a site on it?
Yeah, if you have a widespan, well, no, widespan doesn't really need a site. At some point, you'll want to think about massing out your site too, right? And those are just generic boxes for any surrounding elements. I'm less concerned with the site at this point and more concerned with the project itself. The wide spans, get the roof settled, and then start looking at dividing that surface up so we can begin looking at panel families. Because a lot of what your wide span is going to be panel families. Right? If you have any elements such as this that are block elements or program elements underneath that wide span project, do this for that. Right? Because that's going to be a part that you don't think about. And you're going to be happy you got it done. Because at least then we have a stacking diagram of what goes underneath that wide span roof. Otherwise you end up with a project that looks like all my Kansai airports. They end up with just the roof of the airport. And I don't want that. Okay? Sound good? Alright, excellent. So stay warm, stay healthy. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Trying to keep up with my massing real quick. Could you explain? So I've got one of my levels essentially.
Yep.
The object that you end up arraying. Do I just want to select all the masses and then I save that as the extra?
Oh, hold on 1 second.